Hey, it's Dell Jackson, Ella Hoop Zoom. I got Andy Herr here. We're going to do our annual preseason. I don't know how many years it's been, Andy. Do you remember?
It's at least four.
At least
It's at least
four.
four.
Okay.
So we'll go with four. That's a good number. Next year we'll
Four,
shoot for five and keep it going from there. Hopefully, right?
four is a good number. That's for sure. I like your hat there, dude. I mean, what the
Thank
heck?
you. Am I styling and profiling?
Oh yeah, well, I don't
Good.
I don't know if it's cool to have it off center, but if it's cool, then you're cool. I like it.
Yeah, I like it. We're gonna go with that.
Yeah, all
Yeah.
right. All right. Well, we don't have a lot of them, but we got a couple of those that are on the website. So I'm gonna turn off some of this stuff. See if I can get this out of here. All right, so let's get started. Let's talk about sections. You've seen these teams. I've seen some of these teams. Let's just go with the teams first, Andy, and then we'll go players. So let's start with four this year. Let's start with section four. What's your thought?
Yeah. Yeah, I think section four, for my money, is going to be one of the more fun sections. You have a lot of storylines, I would say, coming in this particular division. I mean, number one, you have to start with the state champs. We don't see state champions here, or we don't have state champions here all that often. They're going to lose a lot of firepower from that team, but they're still going to have the banner to show for it. So, I mean, Mennonite isn't going to maybe necessarily be to state championship caliber, I would suspect, entering the season. But in terms of the divisional race, I think they're going to be right there. Um, I've said this to you. I've said this to folks that I've interacted with over the summer. If there are 10 teams in the 3A ranks in boys basketball in the state of Pennsylvania that are better than Columbia, I need to see them.
Mhm.
I think Columbia's there. This might be one of their more better teams that they've had, certainly in recent memory, I would say, which is saying something because they always make a routine pit stop in the league playoffs and then districts from there. And and what was cool from Sunday, from media day, with talking to Coach Glover when we had him, is you could tell that I think some of last year's disappointments down at the end are really fueling them because they do bring a whole heck of a lot back. If you recall, they had Cedar Crest firmly on the ropes at home in the opening round of leagues. They let that one go, which didn't sit well. And then they had that, I think it was that like monumental lead in the first round of districts at home. They let that slip by.
Wow.
So they weren't able to go to sort of their second home, which was Giant Center last year for the district playoffs. So I certainly think they have the capability to do that this year. Um, but they're going to be tested by their schedule. And to Coach Glover's credit, he always likes to schedule up and get his teams the best looks that they can possibly get, knowing full well that if they do handle their business, it's going to be a deal like last year where hopefully you don't run into a West Catholic in the first round, a state
Mhm.
champion in the first
Yeah.
round. But you got to test yourself because you know that's what's coming because that's where all those
Yeah.
Philadelphia private schools typically reside is down in those lower ranks. So I think Columbia is going to be really, really good. Um, they might be the trendy pick when we have this conversation in February of kind of little guy, quote unquote little guy, maybe go toe to toe with some of the bigger dogs in the league playoffs and maybe wreak some havoc.
Mhm.
I I think based on what I've seen thus far, without the the season itself actually taking place, I think they're going to be one of those teams to look at. And then the other team I really like a lot is Country Day. There's a whole lot of benefits to Country Day being in Single A. We always talk about this. They kind of have that dueling season. They have the chase to get into the league playoffs
Mhm.
in their section, whether they're in 4 or 5 or whatever number we decide to designate that section on any given year. And then they always have the district playoffs there waiting for them in Single A. And no matter what their seed level is, if they're fortunate enough to get there, they're always going to be a problem because the other schools in the 1A ranks do not have the strength of schedule behind them. They're all basically all playing each other. Country Day is playing a really good 3A Columbia, possible state champ, and like they're seeing those types of schools. Um, we were just talking before we went on air here, but I really like Ashby from Country Day. I think he's going to put up a whole lot of points. Um, it's another team that went to the state playoffs. gave one of the prohibitive favorites in the 1A ranks everything they could handle in the first round of states last year.
Mhm.
A ridiculous amount of kids on their roster.
Mhm.
And I don't think they have any seniors either. So this is going to be another team that, maybe we'll see what they do this year. And then, moving on, they can, maybe be even better. They're sort of in a Warwick type mold, right? Where they had a really good year last year, and then they bring essentially everybody back, and, big things are expected of them. But those are three like real key storylines. I would say that they're coming out of Section 4. PV is turning a new chapter, a new leaf, going back to their roots and getting an alum, and Aaron Graybill back on the bench. Anvil's is really, really long. Like, they're a really long team this year, just length and size. And I think that's going to be a surprise, especially in that division. You usually see a whole bunch of, little guys with not a ton of height.
Mhm.
So yeah, for me, I think Section 4 is going to be a really, really fun race. You only get 2 spots. I don't know who's going to get them. I think at least going in without seeing anything, you certainly have 3, the 3 teams I mentioned off top. But I really like this division a lot. I really, really do. I think it's going to be fun.
Good, good. Well, we're going to try to get a couple live stream games in with Section 4 teams as we normally do. So that'll be interesting. All right, let's shift to Section 3, and the big dog there is LS. And I don't even know what to say. I mean, every year I think they're going to go backwards, and every year they're at the top of their division, and every year they get a seed in the districts, and they seem to go to the state tournament. Coach Ed, man, he's got it going. He really does.
He does, and I'm exactly with you. You think every year it's like, okay, finally they're gonna regress back to the mean, but they never do. Like, this is their mean. This is who they are, and until somebody knocks them off and surpasses them, you have to consider them probably the division favorite until proven otherwise, just because they have such a good track record. So I mean, yeah, it's going to be another. I think it's going to be another successful winner in Lampeter for those folks. Smucker is a good place to start when you have a player like him on your roster now. And it was interesting talking to Coach Ed. I mean, you're gonna miss Luke Hines. I mean, he might not have offered a whole lot in the stat department, but as you well know, was there a game that you saw where he was not the player of the game? Like,
I think he took all our swag, and then I had to dip into stuff that we've had in the past years. I mean, I think he had at least 3 pieces of material from me last year. So he was a great interview too. I love that kid. He was fun, and they will miss. I just put up their schedule, or not their schedule, but their roster today, and they don't have quite the length they've had in the past. But you and I both saw them in the summer, and they play. I don't know. They play so hard. At least what I saw this summer, that they're used to it. And I think just me, I'm looking at the rest of that division, and the rest of the division could be dog eat dog world in Section 3.
It could. There should be some good old fashioned cannibalism in the basketball sense. You have a team like Elko in there, who I don't know if maybe they're getting a whole lot of attention. Maybe that's the way they like it. Camden Marquette can get really, really hot, shooting the ball for Elko. Dallas George, I think, for my money, is right up there with maybe another guy who resides in Section 1 for MVP of the entire league. He's just so valuable. I mean, you can tell he's a coach's kid. He does like everything right. And whenever you have a player like that, that's got to be good for quite a few points and quite a few decisions that, might lead to points, on the other side. Coach Shipper at Donegal, I mean, I think he rightly deserved the Coach of the Year honors last year in that division. I like what he has going on. He brought on Coach Long, who used to coach at Solanco. So that ain't too bad when you got 2 head coaches there sitting on your bench. I mean, that has to account for something too.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Octorara's in there, who just returns an all-state kid. Like, I mean, we forget about that.
Yeah.
But again, if we're going to talk about teams, I like LS, and I also like a Calico a lot.
Yeah.
I really like a Calico. We know they like to muck it up. That's the way they like to play. I think they have the pieces that will help them succeed in playing that way. Camden Oates is a really, really good player who, if you don't know his name yet, you will.
Yeah.
You will. Yeah, they're big. They have, they're gonna. There might be some growing pains initially for them because they do have some football kids, and they're obviously playing. Football's playing this weekend. Their basketball team's playing this weekend. I think maybe their football team will play next week too. So it might take them a while to get their sea legs with all of their pieces. But the good news is, in talking to Coach Seth, is he does have some like basketball centric kids on the roster. Now, maybe they haven't been under all of the varsity bright lights before, but that certainly helps when you're not, solely reliant on those dual sport kids, because like every little bit of season is precious. And if you're basically starting like a week or 2 weeks behind schedule, that can be devastating depending on who you are and what your personnel looks like. So
for districts, that could hurt you for districts. Definitely.
It could. It definitely could.
Shouldn't hurt too much in the leagues, although we are starting, I think, December 15th. So it's not too far away. I mean, it's closer than what we think as far as the start of the league. But I tell you what, I think they're gonna, I think that section, somebody gonna come out of there like just a hair for maybe section, and maybe we'll see how it goes. I just looking at some of the rosters and some of the players coming back, I don't know if it's gonna be great basketball. I just think it's gonna be competitive basketball. Let's shift to 2. So everybody's talking about this one team. So let's talk about the one team. Let's talk about the bear in the room. And you talked to Coach this week about it. And what are your thoughts of a team that's coming back and it has, I think, do they have all their guys back from last year? Their key players?
Everybody is, well, I'll put it this way. They went to the state playoffs last year. They played the team that was, I guess, the prohibited. Well, I'm not prohibited, but they entered the state tournament against an unbeaten Radnor team, which, were they probably going to get to the state finals? I doubt it. But point being, it was a really good team out of District 1, and they were up at half. They gave them everything they possibly wanted. They had a kid going to, I know it's going to be wrong, but like Navy or Colgate or like a kid at that level.
Yeah.
Right. And they had no seniors.
Yeah.
Like that team that got that experience is all back.
Yeah.
And if you saw some of our media day stuff, I think it's wide open, and somebody's got to be at the top in the middle of the lower class. And I think Warwick is sitting right there at the very, very high upper class of everybody. So obviously that goes without saying, certainly in Section 2, which again is such a great landing spot for them. I'm a Warwick grad who knows nothing but Section 1. We really weren't cut out for being in that neighborhood. And since we've made that shift down to since Warwick has made that shift down to Section 2 and now 5A, it's a fantastic fit.
Yeah, it's a good fit.
So, I mean, what was interesting in talking to Coach on Sunday was I asked him, I was like, listen, you are bringing back all the key ingredients to the recipe. So are you going to be like status quo? Can you get a little bit more like aggressive, like maybe shifting the guy who was a 2 to a 1? And he was like, yeah, like we can do some things like that, and we can implement some more, we don't have to rely on integrating a base package right now to start, because they know it, right? Like we can go with what we know, and then we can sprinkle in some things that maybe in other years we wouldn't have the ability to tackle just because of, time and the learning curve involved. Like they don't have to worry about any of that. Yeah. And they're all good basketball players too. Like I looked the other weekend, and Caleb Johnson is he's on some like notoriety thing for like a top 60 type showcase thing. So like, it's not just that they bring back all of the kids.
Yeah.
They bring back all of the kids who have talent.
Yes.
And the Jimmies and the Joes,
Yeah.
that's what wins, especially at this level. And they are clearly in the division at the top of the heap. Now, if you want to talk what comes after that.
Yeah, let's talk what comes after that. Let me throw in 2 cents here, and then I'll let you go.
Yep.
You kind of know these teams a little bit better than I do, but I was looking at the roster today, and I followed this team a lot last year because they had so much success. Is Manheim Central, and they lost the top dog, but there was a lot of names that I recognized that were key contributors last year, and then they got that athlete Supreme too as well. So I mean, he's probably our top dunker in the league as well. So I don't know, I mean, I just some of the names that I recognize from following him last year, and guys that weren't scoring 25 like the top dog was last year, but these guys got to play a lot. They hit key shots. I mean, some of these guys, I'm like, whoa, that guy come off the bench and he scored 5 points in the fourth quarter, and it's like, whoa, that's pretty good. Plus, they got a big flavor last year. And they kind of knocked through the pain a little bit, but let's talk about them a little bit. And then what else do you see in Section 2? Because I didn't follow Section 2 as well as I should have last year, but you've seen these guys play in the summer, so give me some thoughts.
I agree. Now, if you would have asked me, and you're going to talk about Manheim Central, obviously. If you would have asked me a few months ago, I don't know if I would have been in total agreement with you, just because we talk about the aspect of like 2-sport kids.
Yes.
And Manheim Central football needs no explanation on how good it is.
Yeah.
And a lot of these kids they're high profile football kids. Like they are at a recruitable level, and you just don't know, right? Like if a good offer comes open to them in that venue, are they necessarily going to play? Well, talking to Coach Fisher, I was pleasantly surprised that it sounds like all of those key pieces that you just mentioned are coming back. Yep. So for all of those reasons that you just listed, are they the number 2? I don't see why you can't say that they have a valid argument to make that case. I think Ephrata is going to be sneaky good.
Yeah,
I think they're going to be sneaky good.
Sneaky good last year. They were sneaky good last year. Yeah. Yeah.
They were Ephrata is going to be that team to where maybe somebody's sailing along and maybe Ephrata stuns them. Like they're very capable. I'll put it this way. They're capable, in my estimation, of beating anybody in their section, like straight up. Like I don't think there's a team that I can say unequivocally can sweep them. And that includes Warwick. Like I think Ephrata, they can. I'm not saying they will, but I think they have the ability to beat anybody in this section straight up. So they're going to be a problem. I think Coach Gaffey is finally starting to reap some of the fruits that he's helped plant a couple years ago with, really focusing in on basketball. What's funny for them is they have some football kids too. And like Ephrata football was like never used to playing this late. So they're going to have to get some of their basketball sea legs under them, but they'll be fine, or at least they better be fine, because as I talked to him on Sunday, let's not forget they're 6A. Like you forget that a lot.
Yeah.
If they would have made districts last year, they could have easily gone up to Geigel. Like I don't think people like understand that. Ephrata, CV, Reading. Maybe it's because we're not used to it, but like that's the world they live in now, and they got to get these wins, as best they can, and then do their work in the section, because again, they're playing a lot of 5As. They're not playing a ton of 6As like CV is, but like Warwick's not, Central's not. Like so they're going to have to start off fast and try and get some of those non-con wins, to start and really in the middle part of the season, whenever they can get them, right? And
did you get to see Spot this summer?
Spot I have not seen, although I really like Jace Conrad a lot. Okay. I really, really like him a lot. The whole thing with them is, what are we going to see with Coach Waltman? Are we going to have blonde bombers reincarnated, or what kind of style are we going to see? And where do they kind of fit into this mix? Yeah. CV, I think we're kind of, waiting on them to take that next push. I know Coach Shipper's kind of waiting for them to see that. Yeah. He was high on his guys as he should be. They lose talent too. Everybody does, but CV is going to be another team that's a problem. We saw E-Town. I don't know how much people are going to be talking about E-Town entering into the season. They're Gilhole, like, you can't, I mean, whatever he is,
Oh,
6'10", 6'11", like that.
great
You don't see
hands.
that very often.
Kid's got great hands.
He does.
I saw him once this summer. I was super impressed. Now he's not super strong, but he's a young kid, so he's gonna get pushed around. But my golly, anything that came close to him, he caught. So he has that coordination, and Coach Lee's a big guy, so they work with that.
Right.
And I think they were like close to 500 last year too, Andy. I mean, they kind of get there. It takes them a while sometimes, but they seem to find a way.
Yeah, and the more we're talking about it, I think section 2 and 3 are really going to be in the same type of molds. I mean, maybe in 2 there is sort of that prohibitive favorite in Warwick as compared to LS, but yeah, I think top to bottom, like it's going to be competitive. Like there's going to be a dogfight to get those 2 slots, specifically in leagues. And then my other PSA, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. I don't know how many people run into Solanco that much just because of where they sit.
I was going to go down there because I know you really like Coach Hall and what he's doing.
Oh my God, I love him. I'm telling you what, like he gets so much out of those kids. If you like to see a coach just coach his tail off, I'll clean it up. I would like to say another word, but I'll clean it up tonight. But
for the kids only, we click that button for kids only.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'll clean it up. So, but you get my point. He coaches his rear end off, and it's for me being an old soul, it's so refreshing because he doesn't let anything slide. Yeah. Like you cannot. I said this to Coach Glover about his kids at Columbia, and I'm going to say it at Solanco. You cannot be soft and get a Solanco basketball uniform. You just can't. Like, you have to be cut from a different cloth. And God bless him. I love the way he coaches. I don't know where maybe they necessarily fit into this, but trust me, I just love the way he coaches. I really do.
I think it might take a couple of years to build that culture up the way he wants. I know he's the AD down there, and that's kind of nice too. All right, let's go to the big boys. Section 1. I think we have a big bear sitting out in section 1 as well, from what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing and what I saw this summer, and probably what you saw. We have a team out there, Andy, that has zero sophomores on their team, and that, my friend, for the LL, is super rare. And all these guys coming back, and when they were sophomores, they didn't quite finish the deal. And last year they were closer to the deal, but probably not where Coach Tommy wanted them. But mercy me, deep, big, fast. So what could you say about Cedar Crest Falcons?
I think you stole all my superlatives. But this is now. Like this there is no tomorrow. This is the year. This is the year they have to put this together. I seen Cedar Crest at different times last year. I wish I could say I feel more comfortable. Like I'm fine with them in section 1. Like I'm fine with that. But if we're talking about like who's going to get to Township, who's going to cut the nets down at Township and on Valentine's weekend, I just wish I could feel better about them. Which and to be honest, I know they're going to see this and they're going to devour that, and I'm just going to feed the beast. So I'm doing them a solid is what I'm doing, right? So because that's just how they're wired, and I love the way they're wired.
I love it.
So
I love
it. But yes, they are the elephant in the room. If you're gonna get the section 1 crown, you got to go through Cornwell. You're just gonna have to. They are so deep. Yeah. They have guards. They have bigs. Yeah. RJ Young, not a lot of people know about him, right? Yeah. Because like obviously
he came on at the end of the year. I saw him at the end of the year. I mean, he was doing some really good things. And by the way, he doesn't play football, so he was in the gym with Coach Smith. Like, and the other guys are playing football, so he got a lot of individual attention. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how they use him. Whether they're going to use 2 big guys at the same time or just rotate them in. I mean, that's a great problem to have, I think.
Well, let me ask you this, because I was thinking, yeah, you could go Twin Towers with him and Champ, but they like to do dribble drive. Can you do dribble drive with two towers inside?
Probably not.
Okay.
No, but they did run some stuff with two bigs last year. They changed up a little bit on the offensive end. I did see that. I was surprised. It was a little bit of a change. They had the dribble drive as their base, but they also had some other stuff where they were doing some high-low and doing some work. So we'll see.
And you like Speaks too. You like Speaks a lot.
I
You like
love
Danny Speaks a lot.
He came on too. So the two
Right.
underclassmen at the end of the year that weren't getting any playing time at the beginning of the year, and then all of a sudden I'm watching them in January in the shootout, and the one kid wins most valuable player. At least we gave him to him. He popped some threes, and I'm like, okay, these are some more pieces. And then we saw him this summer, and it was like there was waves of kids, just waves. And the summer, I don't
Right.
get too excited about summer. I really don't, because you never know who's going to show up and who's there and who's at the beach and who's with a girlfriend and who's doing football and whatever. But they just attack and attack and attack. And I think with this new foul rule, I could see Cedar Crest putting a lot of heat on a lot of different teams. So anyway, let's talk about, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, like, the last thing on them, you just mentioned it. They have the nucleus. This nucleus has been together forever. It's usually like where one goes, we all go, right? Like, if we're all going to show up at Nook in the summer, you're going to get 10 of us.
Yep.
So that speaks, that right there. If you want to talk about secret sauce and what makes teams at this level, don't overlook that, because that's what really, really great elite Cedar Crest teams of a couple of years ago had.
Yeah.
You remember, if you again, shameless plug, but if you read the book, Coach Smith says those kids used to just fight each other in practice and then be best friends as soon as they walked out the gym. And I think this team kind of has that same type of makeup, hopefully from the aggressiveness standpoint. So, yeah.
All right, let's talk about the other teams, because there's some, every year we look at Section 1 and we're just like, last year we kind of thought Hempfield was kind of the class, and it turned out to be that way. But this year, who knows? I'm going to say, I'll go out on a limb and I'll say Penn Manor has a really, really nice bunch of players that could break into, let's go to districts for the first time in a long time. Let's get into league playoffs for the first time. Let's hang a banner for the first time. Let's do some things that other teams in this school haven't done, So let's start with Penn Manor. Your thoughts on the Comets?
Well, when I said league MVP, going back to the Dallas George argument, this is where I was going with it. He's going to Millersville, so we don't see that very often either. So he's literally going, across the parking garage to Bucillo.
Yes.
Ethan Benny, we saw him everywhere in the summer, like everywhere. He was almost like the Penn Manor mascot. Brandon Park, at Hempfield, it didn't matter. He was there. And you and I, we were having a discussion. It's like, is he kind of playing too much? Because seriously, because he is going to be, he's the star. He's the star, but he's really the straw that serves their whole drink. And what's going to be interesting is how, he's a big, but he's not necessarily going to park himself inside. And what I'm curious about, and we saw it a little bit in the summer, is if he has to sort of do ball handling duty, what's that going to look like? Because it's easy to get sort of worn out if you're doing a million different things, no matter how talented you are. So I guess let me start off with that. What do you think from a coaching perspective? And you know them better than anybody.
It'll be interesting. We interviewed Coach Bellew the other day, and he's developing his players, and he's got a good nucleus. He had a good JV team. And they have to find some guys that can do exactly what you said. So, they're working on it. They'll be okay. They have another big guy that's huge and a Division I athlete.
Right.
So it's okay, who in Section 1 has that? I think the only teams that can match them height-wise is Crest.
Correct.
I think that's the only team in Section 1 that can match them as far as height. Now, how the Comets develop their style and what they're going to do, in a close game, we'll see. Let's talk about
height with Wesley, but he's nimble. He's more nimble than people think.
He got great hands and feet. Hey,
Correct. Correct.
you don't be a big time football player if you're stumbling over yourself. I'm sorry. He's a big dude. They got him listed at 275, by the way. I put that up on the website the other day. Coach Bellew is the only guy that sent me to weights. And if somebody sends me to weights, I put him up there. And he's got him at 275, and that's probably legit. You know what I'm saying? Probably not
Yeah.
there. Let's talk about Township a little bit. I mean, they're
I
kind
like,
of, who knows? I mean, sometimes you see them and you're like, boy, they're really good. And other times you're like, I don't know, that they had a rough year last year. It was one of the few rough years, wins and losses that Coach John's had since he's been there. And they always start out slow.
that's the joke, right? That's sort of the running joke. If you follow this, this drill, I like him. I like him a lot. I really do. I said this before. I said this to Coach Johns on Sunday on tape. I can't remember, in my experience doing this, I can't remember just off the top of my head a player that made a bigger jump from the end of the regular season through the summer than Caden Young at Township, the guard. To me, he's come night and day from where he was. He's so he's so crafty. He can get to the rim now. He can finish. He can facilitate. They have Henson back, which, I mean, it's another piece. Like, when we're not mentioning these names, like, I don't know if he's always at the top. He probably should be, because the kid can go off for 20 any given night.
Any night, yeah.
Correct. You talk about height. I saw Landon Kennel, the wide receiver, going to Monmouth. I saw he's back on the roster this year, so that's the plan. That's another height piece. I mean,
an athlete.
Correct. And we talk about, and you and I have talked for the last couple of years, Section 1 just hasn't been big. It's just weird.
No.
Right. And like, now it finally seems like we're getting back to the height that we've seen for, ever, basically. But I like Township. I really, really do. They played so well together when I saw them in the summer, when, again, they had their whole complement, or enough to basically go team 1 and team 2.
For sure.
So yeah, they're my team. I'm going to call them my stock market team. If you want to buy stock in them now, it might be kind of cheap, but you might get rich, come February, if they perform up to the ceiling that I think that they're capable of. Well, we talked about the league. I'll just talk on the league champs here real quick.
Yeah.
And then we can go through some of the other guys.
Sure.
Hempfield, they're not going to take as far a step back as I think people might think. That's where I was
going, brother. I was going down the Hempfield. I was like, all right, you're going to put $10 on Township. I'm going to put 10 on Hempfield. And, it's like, what in the world? They got an all-star player, and, talk about mucking it up. There's a team that can and probably will this year go a little bit slower than they have in the past and just frustrate the heck out of teams. I see them beating teams like just because they do,
they're gonna, I tell you what, we can bank on this any year, but I think especially this year, you're really going to see it where maybe they start off a little slow early on, just in the sense of, like, we got to somehow figure out who's going to handle the ball other than Miguel Pena, because he ain't walking through the door. Right. And we know how much the ball was in his hands.
Yes.
Troyer's going to have to take that leap up of being 1A on the scouting report.
Yes.
He could sort of not hide, but he wasn't at the top of the list. He was on the list, but not at the top. And as you know, that's a world of difference, and you better be ready for it. We've seen kids historically, not at Hempfield, but otherwise, who it's like, you think they're ready and they're not. And I know you like Troyer a lot. I think he's up for the challenge, and Hempfield is going to be one of those teams where they're going to have a say in some way, shape, or form of how this section shapes out. They are not going to take as big a step back. I would be shocked if they take as big a step back as I think people might be suspecting they will, losing all their horses.
I would agree with that. Let's talk about a wild card team. And I'm thinking McCaskey, because they got another player back, which you can touch on a little bit. And we saw them a lot this summer, and that's kind of one of the missing pieces. And they got some really good guard play as well, which is typical McCaskey. But go ahead, touch on the Tornado a little bit.
Out of all the conversations we had on Sunday with coaches at Media Day, the conversation with Coach Freddie from McCaskey was by far the one that I enjoyed the most. just in the sense of, look, we know, McCaskey fans know, they haven't been to the playoffs in what seems like a million years for them, right? You used to be able to wake up and they'd be at the top of Section 1 in districts, like they didn't have to think about it. It's been a struggle for them the last couple of years, and you just kind of wonder, what does that look like enthusiasm levels, like are they going to be able to, kind of get back up? And it was awesome to me when he said, when the kids ask him, like, hey coach, I know we just had practice, but we want to come back, like bring us back tonight, like we want to get going for practice again, like we want to go again. Mm-hmm. And like to me that means a lot, right? Yeah. Like I'm used to McCaskey being at the top of the heap, and it's been a while since they've been there. And I've said this before, I know they have the right guy for the job. Just what he does for those kids, the way he really embraces McCaskey as being a integral part of the Lancaster City community. He's doing all the right things, and I'm rooting for him and I'm rooting for them. And you're right. When he said they had 5 kids on the roster that can just straight up dunk, like when's the last time we could say that about a McCaskey roster, as blasphemous as that might be to say? Like, again, that doesn't account for wins just rolling out of bed, but that matters. Like if they have that athleticism back, how many teams in Section 1 can say, oh, we have like 5 guys that we can just like stand still and dunk?
Right. Yeah.
Like not many, right?
Yeah.
And if Kuma's back, I'm assuming that's who you're talking about.
Yeah, that's who I was talking about.
Yeah.
He was kind of coming 2 years ago, and we were okay. And he wasn't there last year. Now he's back. And that's, to me, just watching them a little bit this summer, they needed a big guy that could play in the worst way. And he's going to fill that role for them. And that's going to make them so much better. So much.
You're right. And speaking of McCaskey, they have a fantastic, if you're looking for early things to go to this weekend, McCaskey has a really, really cool showcase tournament. They have Chichester coming in, who's playing Warwick, who, as we said, is either 1 or 1A or 1B, whatever you want to slot them in terms of overall league favorites. They're in McCaskey. And then we're getting the old-fashioned Coatesville-McCaskey rivalry as the doubleheader on that night. So no matter what happens in that game, they're going to play Coatesville. They might even play Warwick. We're going to find out a lot about McCaskey, maybe as early as Sunday, to be quite honest, based on that competition and where that maybe stacks up in terms of Section 1. So you're right. I was.
And by the way, they have Reading next Thursday. I just want to throw that out as well.
New Era Reading as well.
Yeah. I'm just saying that McCaskey.
I know.
Shy away.
They don't.
How about the Cedars? Like you talk to Coach, and I know he went into that job and he told people it was going to be a rebuild, and he's a Lebanon guy, so he kind of knows what he's getting into. Is there growth there? I mean, you saw the Cedars this summer. Is there growth?
There is. There is growth. I'm not sure if they're quite a cedar quite yet. They might be more of maybe like an oak tree or something like that, but they're growing.
A small
again.
They're not very big.
What does correct? But they are. Listen, there was improvement there when I saw them in the summer. Now, to your point, as we state with like a disclaimer, like we should have like the disclaimer banner thing, like views that come from seeing teams in the summer may not necessarily reflect the actual.
That's me.
But no, I mean, I liked what I saw. The whole thing for them is, what does success look like, right? Like we just mentioned all of these teams in Section 1. And where do they stack up? I mean, they gave Penn Manor all they wanted on their senior night. I mean, the one loss that I think is going to be the most not important, but maybe noticeable of any team is Emmanuel Mason from last year. I said this before. I saw 2 Lebanon games, and I don't think I know he didn't play the entire year, but I think that kid scored like 79 in the 2 games I saw. So like, there ain't no way. Like, no selective amnesia. Like, I can't get that out of my head. And like, I have to understand that they don't have that anymore. So But I do think they have more like well-rounded pieces that can mold together. But you're right. It's not going to be an overnight fix at Lebanon. It's just
Right.
not. But I do think, again, similar to McCaskey, I think they have the right guy who understands it.
Yes.
He knows this isn't going to be done overnight. It's not going to be a quick fix.
Yeah.
But if you can sort of build it organically,
yeah.
and get the town, get the city rejuvenated again, they'll be back on their feet in no time. But yeah, it's just going to be. I'll tell you what. If you want to watch Lebanon this year, see what they do in non-Section 1 games. Like I know they have their tournament coming up with like
second weekend.
North Schuylkill's in it, Elko's in it. See what Lebanon does with those types of teams, and then that'll sort of tell you, know, what does last year look like compared to this year. I think that's going to be a better gauge for Lebanon, if I had to say.
Yeah. Okay. We did a good kind of breakdown of the teams. Here's what I'm going to do, Andy. Is I'm just going to read. I went back in our website today, and I looked at returning OLL players, which you and I work on at the end of the year. We don't, the newspapers have the coaches voting, and we just do our own voting because we get to see everybody play a little bit. So let me just go through the list. We'll do Section 1, and we've already touched on some of these guys. And then I'll just throw something out there at the end for each section. So top scorer in Section 1 last year was Ethan Benny. So he's coming back. Penn Manor. Mm-hmm. Sebastian Henson, which we already talked about, score supreme. A kid that we haven't talked about is Owen Chernick from Cedar Crest. Tough point guard and is really
leader.
And Fernando Marquez, which we've seen him, and that's another athlete out there. Ben Troyer, 6'4" kid, and DeMar Wesley from Penn Manor, and you mentioned Caden Young from Township. So just looking at the names on this list, we're talking forwards and guard forwards. We're talking 6'6", 6'3", 6'2", 6'4", 6'6". Got some big boys in there that can play. So that I don't know. That I think that's a different, as you and I have talked about. It's usually been the guards in Section 1. The guys have been scoring all the points, but I think we're going to have some good forwards this year. Section 2 coming back, got Carter Horst, who's going to York, correct?
Yep. There's a Lidditz to York pipeline here lately.
How about that? Aaron Enterline from Central, we talked about him. Caleb Johnson, Trevor Evan, and Your Majesty Washington. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Only 4 guys from Warwick coming back on our list there. Who breaks into that list in Section 2? Who do you think for this year? Who's going to be our surprise guy in Section 2?
Surprise guy?
Over. You mentioned a couple earlier, I think.
Well, he might not have the stat line that might show it, but we don't really care. Sometimes we judge it based on who is most valuable.
Sure.
I tell you, honestly, I like Brock Osborne from Solanco. You talk about a kid who is in the mold of his coach. And I saw him at summer, and I know he's been on some recruiting visits and, hey, check out the facilities, this type of stuff, which is great to see. This summer, I did not see an offensive rebound that he didn't say, like, I can go get that, or I'm going to go get that.
How big is he? How big?
He's not big. I mean, he's 6. Yeah. Oh yeah. He's over that, but yeah, okay. He ain't no 6'11" or nothing like that.
Not a great big guy. Yeah.
No, but he's just a junkyard dog who, again, when you're talking about a team like Solanco, who's going to have to just be grimy and, trying to figure out like a way to win. Yeah. If he can steal a couple of extra possessions, that could be huge, because don't forget this, like they were leading Warwick at home late last year, like into the third. Yeah. So again, if that whole Warwick team's bringing everybody back, and Solanco's bringing quite a few pieces back, like that's a name that sticks out. I mean, as we mentioned, Gilhole, if he's going to just literally turn around and lay it in.
Block shots and block
Correct.
Shots. Yeah. I mean,
correct.
He'll be a force on the defensive end as well. Absolutely. Okay. Section 3 coming back. Here's what I got. Dallas George, Zach Kurt, who we didn't talk too much about yet. Chase Smucker, who we did mention. Cam Marquette, we talked about him a little bit. Donegal, Evan Patel, and the guy from Cocalico, Camden Ox. So that's what we have coming back. I think as I look at this list, we're going back to the guards. What do you think?
We're going back to the guards, although Oates, as I said, from Cocalico is more, he's a bigger boy.
Yeah.
So again, when you mention like a guard heavy centric thing where sort of maybe the best players reside.
Yeah.
That, you know, that's why I like Cocalico. I think they offer a lot of pieces that maybe not everyone does, because Hamilton ain't there at Octorara like this year. He's just not. And like Octorara's probably going to be small. I'll probably see them this weekend, so I'll get a better gauge on that. But yeah, like, I mean, it is very guard centric in that division. I'm just trying to think of tall kids. Kral from Northern Lebanon. He's another talented young pup.
Okay.
I think he's only going to be a sophomore this year.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
But I know he runs with some AAU folks in the off season. I like him. He's another sort of like nimble type guy you wouldn't suspect it. He's sort of in like a bigger frame for his size, but I like him a lot. I think there's a lot of potential there. But yeah, there's Section 3 is probably going to be guard dominant in terms of guys who are going to steal your headlines night in and night out. I would say.
I'll put you on a John Walk notice here. You know, guys who score 30 points. So let's do the over under for Zach Kurtz. I'm going to say over 7 this year. That's what I'm going to say.
I mean, I've seen him do it. I don't know how many times. I might have seen him do it 7 times already. So that's probably a fair number. I mean, I'll put it this way. I don't care what anybody else has. If you're going to have a guy who can roll out of bed and score 30, maybe 10 times, I mean, that's a huge number, like 10 times of 30. But point being, I don't know if anybody has that just like immediate star power can fill it up quite like that. Although again,
that guy's got a motor and a half.
He does.
Sometimes
and he's going to
be in trouble, but he's got a motor and a half. I saw him play.
And he's going to have to be the man.
Yeah,
he's going to have to be the man this year.
I saw him play last year. The game, he had 4 fouls in the first half. He played the entire second half. Didn't foul out. Played hard, but he was smart about it. I
have no idea how he did it that night.
I don't know either.
God love him. God love him.
He took a T-shirt from me too last year, so it's all good. All right, let's go to Section 4. Man, oh man, it's like Columbia City here. Artie Poindexter, Jordan Poole, Braylon Miller. Wow. LMH has got the Miles Halverson, who was hurt.
Right.
Remember in the districts, and I don't even know if he played in the States. I
want to say he did, but don't quote me on that. But I'm pretty sure he.
Because they had another guy that was playing. We didn't have him on the roster. I listened to the game the other day, and it's like
Rothwine.
Yeah, my boy. Yeah, definitely. And then you like Ashby from
love him. That's another kid can fill it up.
Yeah. So and Cam Hurst. I mean, talk about motors. That guy, I don't know. He had like 8 rebounds in a state final game. You know, he's 5'7" on a good day. You know, so yeah, I thought they did a good job with him. They brought him along well last year. They didn't put him in the fire to start with, and as the year went on, he played more. He had more confidence, and he did a great job. Really great job.
They did, and they did a great job of, again, bringing him into the fray with his injury. And then the other thing that was maybe more valuable was the schedule that they played. Sure. And that's a credit to Coach Hartenstein, who really had sort of the reins on from Coach Buckwalter of like, hey, listen, like go out, like figure out who's in our weight class in the summer. And like, let's try and find these guys. Let's see if we can get them in the winter months. And like they went toe to toe against Steel High, which that somehow that got more exciting after the buzzer ended. But
I was there. It was
I know you were. but
I love that game. Though.
But
I do. I always go to that game when Steel High's down there. I always go to that game. I don't care who else is playing. That's my game.
But point being, that helped them because that was was ugly. Like that
Yeah.
was
Yeah,
very
it was ugly.
chippy. That was very nasty, and that helped him against that Mahanoy City because
Yeah. Oh, that
their
was
fans got
chippy. Yeah. Yeah, that
yeah,
was nuts.
and
Yeah.
then like their
Finals,
grand prize at the
state
end of it all
finals.
is Aliquippa.
That got a
So
little chippy at times too.
it
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we covered sections, we covered players. Let me talk a little bit about the website, what's going on here. We're still
Yep.
working on a redesign, and I don't know if it'll be ready by the beginning of the year, but we're working on it. So a little bit new, a little bit different. I know I put in my column some of the old splash pages that we had going way back when, and we're working on it. But the thing that you and I are both real excited about is possibly having a mobile app, which people can get, on the App Store. So we're working on that. I don't know how long it'll take to be developed, but I know from our statistics that 75 or 80% of people are picking it up on the phone. They're not using a computer like I do. They're using it on the phone and checking things. So I'm looking forward to that. People I talked to thought it would be a good idea. I don't know. Your thoughts on that?
I mean, we've talked about it before. I think of all of our sort of grand plans, I think this might be one of the coolest and one of the most useful. I mean, the live streaming, obviously, when we brought it on a few years ago, obviously has its place. The numbers sort of speak for themselves, especially depending on who we have on it, because we know who likes to blow up our numbers.
Yes, we do.
But yeah, I think that was one of the cool things that has sort of elevated the site over the last couple years, and I think this is sort of if this all comes to pass, I think this is going to be a really cool thing. I mean, just as you mentioned, everybody's living on their phones, whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent. And if LL Hoops can sort of have a spot next to, the Gram or Snap or Facebook or whatever, or yeah, I mean, maybe we'll live right next to those companies.
Maybe.
How about it?
We are high school basketball. That's what we do.
No,
And
I know, but I'm
you
saying on
remind
the
me of that all the time. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
we arrange
exactly.
the apps,
Yeah.
and yeah, we'll live
Yeah.
next to somebody's stock portfolio, and yeah, like
Yeah.
that's where
Yeah.
we belong.
Yeah. We belong there. I did push the book a little bit today on the Twitter site. So 50 years of the LL, and that's on Amazon. I couldn't quite put it together with the Barnes and Noble people for various reasons, but it's still up there and the price is going down. So, it used to be $55 and now it's 40. So good Christmas present. I'll put a plug in there. Live stream. We do have a live stream schedule and we'll see how it goes. I don't like putting it out ahead of time just because I'm not sure how things are going to go with our tech stuff, but we try to pick a game at least in each section. So each section will get a little exposure. And as you said, that was an experiment we did a couple years ago. It seems to have worked. It's got some traction. It's not the only thing we do, but it's something. Coach Goodling's going to be back, and John Graham, who did the LL finals, who really brings a lot of enthusiasm to our broadcast. He's going to be back, and Bruce will be doing our production, and we might be doing something different with around the league, but I'm not going to talk on that too much until we see if it works. So I'm looking forward to this year as always. I mean, it's kind of, I know you and I talk about it, and I'm like, I got to put something out, and you're like, not really, and I got to put something out, and you're like, no, not really, and it's like, okay, so the season's here, and you and I will be busy, and everybody be busy, but I got the schedules up. I was working, Andy, before we got on tonight, I was working on a schedule for next week, and I'm like, okay, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. There's some tournaments next weekend, which I think that's a really good move for teams, especially these teams that are good in football. And even if they're not, it gives them another week to kind of fine tune. They throw a game in there usually, but it's the second weekend, and the basketball's better. The first weekend, sometimes it's bad. Just
Right.
There's a lot of turnovers and people getting used to it and the speed and the fans, and it's different when there's nobody in the gym. When there's people in the gym and people going crazy and the horns are going, and referees are calling stuff that you're like, well, what's that all about? So, hey, what are
Yeah,
your
you're playing for real now.
yeah? What are your thoughts on the the 5 fouls and a quarter, 2 shots? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, one of your interviews was really good on that. I don't know who
Yeah,
talked about that. Who was
yeah,
it?
it was.
Coach
I
John.
know we asked Coach Johns just because I know he's a hoop head, obviously, and he can probably forward think well enough to what that might look like. Actually, it's funny you say that. I watched the interview with Eberly that you did a few weeks back, just literally like right before we got on this, because I hadn't seen it yet, which shame on me for not following our own product, I guess, at a moment's notice. But no, I think, I don't know, like this is going to be one of these things where I know for me, it's going to be weird. Like I know it's coming, but it's sort of like, okay, well, that's the 5th foul. Why are we going to the line? Oh, that's right. Like I don't know. It's going to be weird. I guess I'm not totally opposed to it. It's just one of these, like, I have to see it work, right? Like we can talk about it and see like what we think it's going to, but until we see it in action,
Sure.
Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, what do you think? I guess, like, I was thinking, like, from an aggressive standpoint, like, there doesn't seem like there's really a penalty for like
no.
not like for holding back, because it's like, well, if it's 5, like, who
Yeah,
cares?
but
Like,
here's the problem though. So I've been an assistant with coaches, and sometimes they're like, well, you got to know if you can give a foul away. And I'm there like, yeah, but you only have 5 fouls. So if your best guy is giving a foul and giving him his second in the first period or the second period, it's like all of a sudden you have something else to worry about. It's not like the NBA, you got
right.
6 fouls. So, do some teams sub in at the end and be more aggressive, or do they press, at the end of the first quarter when they have fouls to give? I don't think we're going to see a lot of that early. Maybe as guys start getting their heads wrapped around that. I think it's going to be cool at the end of the game, because I think there's many, many ways from a coaching standpoint to look at things. It's like, do I foul to stop the clock? And the answer is, well, yeah. But now it's like, okay, well, I just put their best foul shooter on the line, and now instead of being down by 3, I'm down by 5. That type of thing's going to go on. And then the other thing is guys stepping up to the line, especially the guys that aren't the stars. They get 2 shots and they're like, you know what? The first shot's not as difficult as it was last year. So that's gonna help our foul shooting percentage. And Andy, I used to do foul shooting percentage for the league, and sometimes I look at it, and on average, well, I'll ask you, what do you think on average LL teams shoot from the league, from the percentage, from the foul line?
Oh man,
or less. You'll be surprised.
Can I just give a broad statement rather than a percentage?
Sure.
From what I see, it's not very good.
It's 60.
From what I see,
60%. That's
not great.
No, and the better teams will shoot better. But all in all, it's going to come in at 60, 65%. If a team hits 70, that's outstanding as far as percentage from the foul. Now that includes everybody's. Including your star and the guys getting in the bench, and mop up time and all that. But it's around 60%. So
yeah, I knew it wasn't good. It never looks good. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, I think our percentages will go up. I think the scoring will go up a little bit. You do have another foul, so you can be more aggressive. I mean, if I'm a coach and I got 3 fouls at the end of the first quarter, I might go to a trap. I don't want to give up points. That's the other thing. It's that mentality. It's like, well, if I do this, if I come over aggressive, then number one, I'm putting a guy in foul trouble. Okay, that's the first thing. And number 2 is, if I'm trapping, I might be giving up a layup where I really didn't want to do that. All I want to do is foul. And if the ref missed the foul, or if I'm fouling intentionally and they don't see it, it's like, uh-oh, and then I hurt myself. So I think we're not going to see a lot that has a lot to play, maybe at the end of the half, but for sure at the end of the game. For sure at the end of the game.
Yeah, my whole thing is, I think some of the, like, coaches and kids are sort of gonna I imagine sort of be in my realm where it's like we're not going to notice like a wholesale
Change.
like enormous change, especially early and
Yeah.
especially in the first half of games that are early. We're
Yeah.
probably just going to play. And then it's like, oh yeah, that's right. This is this new rule thing. That's how I imagine it will go. I don't think we're going to try and reinvent the wheel here in the first half, or maybe we will. I don't know. Like, I don't think it's going to look any different. It's just going to be one of those weird things where it's like, oh yeah, this is this new, but you're right. It's going to be more of an end of game thing, I think, more than anything else. But I mean, if you're going to be aggressive and if you're going to give up 2, 4, 6, however many three throws
Yeah.
over and over and over again, then that's going to add up. So yeah, I don't know. I have to see it how it works out, but we'll figure it out like anything else.
I think it's going to be cool at district time because you're going to see different teams with different mindsets. You know what I mean? You're
Right.
not going to see LL teams, and we're going to like, okay, this is what most of the guys are doing. But I think when we get to districts and states, there's going to be some coaches that want to use the foul, that want to, push it a little bit. So we'll see. So again, 24th year, we'll hit Hershey for districts. We'll hit Township for our LL finals. I'm not sure if we're going to get the LL finals live stream. I'm still working on that. And anybody wants to sponsor us, I'm always up for a little cash so we can, spread the wealth around a little bit and pay for apps and pay for server spaces and all the stuff that we do that we don't charge money for. So we're in for that. And then hopefully we'll be invited to the PIAAs, which we have been. We've been blessed that we are allowed to get up there. So thank you, buddy. Any parting words, wisdom?
No, I'm ready to get going. As always, I've been ready to get going for forever. Things like Sunday, and again, gracias to LMP and all those folks for putting that together and giving us a room and doing all that. That's fun. Like I said, it's like a family reunion, seeing everybody who you haven't seen in a few months and everything like that. And this is fun too, but I'm glad talking season's over.
Yeah.
Like
Friday
finally
Saturday, here we go.
6 o'clock. I'll be happier than anything else, just being in the gym probably at 6 o'clock somewhere with my notepad in my lap, and we're tipping things off, and we're on the road to Hershey.
You know where you're headed Friday, or up in the air yet?
My guess is going to be Octorara on Friday. Because I think Solanco plays Twin Valley. That'll be a pretty cool game. And then Saturday, I'm going to have to see what happens on Friday and who plays when
and what time they play. Some of them play at 2:00, some of them play at 6, and some degenerates might see 2 games that day. Who knows? Not even in the might see 3. So we'll see how it goes. Thank you, brother. Appreciate all.
Thank you.
We'll put this up, and we're looking forward to your write-ups on Friday and Saturday. Thanks, Andy.
Good enough. See ya.
Yeah.